Well, welcome to our event tonight. It is Sustainability in Action. Thank you all for being here. My name is Julie Hancher. I am co-founder and editor of Green Philly. Green Philly is your resource for a sustainable, local, and accessible lifestyle. And as a media publication, we share sustainability information on our website, social media, and our weekly newsletter to keep you informed and inspired. Our mission is to connect you to sustainable solutions for a resilient future, make sustainability fun, and foster a vibrant, inclusive community. So we do that on our website. We also host events like tonight's, and also a lot throughout the year, like panel discussions, interactive tours. Our signature event, we have two. One is Sustain PHL, happening on October 10th. We have some lovely nominees in the room, like Chantel Westby, an artist who is working on climate action, and also amazing change makers from across the city. So feel free to ask us for more info or learn about that on October 10th. And also Eco Fair, which we debuted in April and will return next spring as well. So this event specifically is a part of the Every Voice, Every Vote, which is a collaborative project managed by the Lenfest Institute for Journalism. Lead support, this is gonna be long just for 1 second, but I have to read it. Lead support for Every Voice, Every Vote in 2024 and 2025 is provided by the William Penn Foundation with additional funding from the Lenfest Institute for Journalism, Comcast, NBC Universal, the John and James Knight Foundation, Henry Kimmelman Family Foundation, Judy and Peter Leon, Arctos, Wincote Foundation, 25th Century Foundation, and Dolfinger McMahon Foundation. Whew. Too long didn't read. To learn more about this really cool project, basically everyvoice-everyvote.org will give you information. I think there's over 70 organizations that are media organizations like Green Philly, and then community organizations that are trying to get people civically engaged. So we are so excited to kick off this event in the fall, end of summer. There may be an important election coming up. I don't know if anyone's heard about it, but just thinking of how, not only on a national level, but a local level, how you all can stay connected and thinking about how to become more informed and engaged citizens. Also, just want to mention, we'll be covering a lot more stories. So Angie Bacca on our team is our civics reporter. She'll be covering cool events. So if you know of also stuff about if you have questions of how you could become engaged, have questions about how the city works, have tips, just talk to Angie. Also introducing my team really quickly, Melvin, our awesome events manager, is putting together our events. And then Lauren in the back does social and our newsletter and marketing. So feel free to say hi. Now, some quick logistics. There's a bathroom on this floor and the first floor. Also, this is a lovely space at the Arts League, so thank you so much to the Arts League and Grace, who's in the back as the exec director, for having us here tonight, too. We're really excited as part of Green Philly to have been all over the city this year and continue to just have events in different neighborhoods. And we're just excited to talk, once again, about how to be civically engaged, how the government works, and what's happening locally. So our lovely panel for this evening, we have Liz Lakinaw, who is the Interim Director of Sustainability for the City of Philadelphia. Welcome, Liz. And in case you did not see the email and notice that this is not Jamie Gauthier, Council Member, Harrison Feynman, Jamie's Director of Communications, is here to answer questions on her behalf. Unfortunately, the Council Member has COVID and obviously cannot make it here tonight. So thank you for being here, Harrison. We're excited to talk to you regardless about what's happening in City Council. Welcome, Harrison. All right, so I want to ask each of you, actually I want to start with Liz here. And Philadelphia has made such strides in sustainability. Green Philly started in 2008 when Mayor Nutter had introduced Greenworks, which was his plan to make Philly the greenest city in America. Does anyone think we're the greenest city? Not the whole trash sweeping or anything yet? All right, so I will say there's a lot of really great things. I remember when we moved to Philly in 2007, there weren't many farmers markets, there weren't many bike lanes, and you can just say over the past 16 years, Green Philly has had a lot of fun seeing the progress. So I'm curious, Liz, from your perspective, you've been in the director, for a year and a half about? Interim director. What do you think Philadelphia has accomplished in sustainability?
Sure, I think the office has changed a lot. First of all, thank you. I'm very happy to see everyone here. I think the office has changed a lot over the last decade or so. Really, a lot of our focus is on climate. I think we talk occasionally. We really need to do, I think, an updated strategic plan about what our office is, because I think we get a lot of questions about waste and recycling. We have departments that do that. I think we can certainly help influence a lot of environmental issues. But really, when we talk about a lot of the work of our office, it's about climate, mitigation, energy. And then when we have changes in administration, we're really looking at how we link the work we do with safety, clean energy, housing, again, clean energy and housing, efficiency in buildings. And so I think the flavor has changed, although we certainly are interested in things like tree planting because it reduces the heat canopy and things of that nature. So in terms of accomplishments, I'll just, you might need the hook, because my team, we're a pretty small team for the city. We're a big team for sustainability in general. We go to conferences and a lot of places have a person. We have 27 people. So right there is a huge change. We're pretty big. We have 4 teams right now. We have a policy and strategic initiatives team. We have an energy team. It's newly named the Division of Energy and Climate Solutions. We have a climate resilience team, and then we also have an environmental justice team, which is very new. And so in terms of our policy team, they're really overseeing a lot of the grant work that we do, and of course with the Biden-Harris administration and the Inflation Reduction Act, we're seeing money for climate that we have not seen before, and knock wood, we'll get to see it again in another year. And so right now, we've won about $40 million in Inflation Reduction Act grants. About 1.9 million of that is going to community-based organizations, because that is a key factor for a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act dollars. And then we're waiting to hear about another 139 million. So there's a lot of money coming to the city. And we are convening a lot of different partners to make sure everyone is aware of opportunities, because not everything is for government. A lot of it is for other types of organizations. The incentives that are coming, that's a whole different thing, and we'll get into that as we learn more. Like I said, give me the hook, because I can keep going. But for our energy team, we opened the Adams Solar Array earlier this year. So that is a solar array in Adams County, and that is going to be powering 24%, quarter of our municipal buildings. We have a second RFP out to do more renewable energy projects, so very excited about that. Hopefully by winter we'll have a consultant selected and understand where that's headed. Something I think that's very keyed into the mayor's agenda with our Philly Streetlight Improvement Program. We are about 47% complete now with changing out the high pressure sodium lighting fixtures with LED. And so that right now is really the biggest energy saver that the city can do. More things are on the horizon, can't talk about them yet, but that's a big one. We are working on it, we finished an energy poverty alleviation strategy, because utility bills are so expensive, and certainly disproportionately the income that are more vulnerable residents, they're just paying too much, about 19% more than the national average, which is about 6% of a typical household bill. And we're finishing up right now. So many opportunities with clean energy workforce with all of these Biden dollars. What we're finding, though, is that we need the workers and we need to train them up. So that is, right now finishing a study to really understand the gaps, and then we have some grant money to take that forward. Almost done. Resilience, we are going to be kicking off later this year a citywide resilience plan. The last one we did, Growing Stronger, was from 2015. That was really focused on city departments. It was not a citywide process. This is something that we are going to be going out into the communities. We will have community ambassadors. Ambassadors will be paid a stipend to help us with our planning process. So that's really exciting, and I think a very good, exciting model, similar to what the city did with the Philadelphia Tree Plan, if any of you were involved with that. We do a lot of work in Eastwick. We have a place-based program. And so with that program, where there's repetitive flooding and these poor people are just constantly in the crosshairs every time there's a storm, we have a community ambassador there. So it's not really only about building the infrastructure to alleviate or mitigate the flooding problems they have, but so much of it is about building trust in government again. And so we have someone dedicated. We do town halls. We do a lot of work in the community. So if there is a light out, they know they can come to us and we will track it down to get that fixed. So it's really a wide range.
Is Eastwick the only neighborhood you have someone that's there present in the community?
Yeah, so the way we have a place-based program, which is broad. It shouldn't just be Eastwick, but the funding that we have and the most immediate need has been around Eastwick. We did get federal money to hire another place-based person. This person will be focused on heat. We get a lot of questions about heat. Some of you may be familiar with our Beat the Heat plan. We get a lot of questions about that, but basically when that study ended, the person went away, and now we've been grappling since then of like, how do we stay on top of this? So at least as a stopgap, we will have a person. It's probably a community in North Philly. We're still sort of working that out. But we will have a second place-based community, different theme. We would love to expand it and work with our planning commission really too, because they have district planners. How can we really use some of the resources we already have? We're doing pilots. We just put in a cool pavement in Hunting Park, and we are monitoring that before we really talk about that or implement that more broadly to see not only how much does the pavement get cooled, but durability-wise. They do this in the Southwest. They don't have the freeze-thaw that we have. So I think there's a lot of things we want to test. How well does it hold line striping, things like that. So right now it's actually in the park, Hunting Park, and we are monitoring. But first day, end of day, they tested just with like a heat meter. It was 15 degrees cooler. So I think we know from a cooling perspective, it'll work, but how durable is it in our climate? And then we have federal money to do a pilot cool roofs program, and we're working that out now. And I could go on. You want more? Well, let me one more, environmental justice. Because this is actually very pertinent right now. Through October 4th, we do have a grant program that is open, the Community Resilience Environmental Justice Fund. It's a micro grant program, low barrier to entry. There's information on our website. It's $15,000 to 20 organizations to really do anything that's advancing environmental justice. So thank you for your patience with that list, but we're doing a lot.
Well, thanks for what you're doing. And I know Harrison just took the mic. Just one really quick logistical question, because I've heard this for other city departments. You said you have a small team of 27 people. How is that like, in 30 seconds or less, small, average, or large compared to other city government? Just like, how does that factor?
From what I've seen, it's large. I think a lot of cities have 1, 2, 3. So we are pretty lucky that way.
I was shocked. I learned that I think there's one person in the recycling department in all of Philadelphia, but I think Houston has like 55 or something by comparison. I don't know if that's the current logistics, but
I think there are 4 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, 4 in recycling. Yeah. All right, they went up. They quadrupled in size. Good news. Anyway, so Harrison, I was curious from the city council perspective. I know Council Member Gauthier is the I don't know the title. It's the lead of the environmental committee? Chair. Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't remember the logistical titles, they're all, same thing. We can trade the names in, just kidding around. So as chair of the environmental committee, what types of things has Councilmember Gauthier worked on?
Thanks for the question. Hello, everyone. I just want to start by saying I'm sorry the council member isn't up here. She definitely wishes she could be here. Obviously, we want to make sure everyone is safe and healthy. So hopefully we'll get her to another one of your events in the future. So as the chair of the Committee on the Environment, she would consider any sort of environmental legislation. What counts as environmental legislation is up to the council president. If it's, let's say a tax credit, that could in theory go to another committee, so it's a little bit fluid. In terms of what city council itself can do, obviously pass legislation, but we also fund all the city departments. So we fund the Office of Sustainability. But something that stuck out to me when you were speaking is the word federal money, which I think you said for almost everything. And I think I do want to emphasize that the Biden and Harris administration has been transformative for this. Inflation Reduction Act, we've been talking about it, is the biggest investment in sustainability ever. And it's really, even just in the 3rd district where we are right now, especially in Southwest Philadelphia near Bartram's Garden and in Copps Creek as well, has just like changed the game completely. And we're just able to do a lot of remediation, implementing other green measures as well. So we're hopefully next year we'll continue to have that partnership because that really enables a lot of our work.
And I was curious because Liz mentioned that the Office of Sustainability has 27 people. How many people are on the environmental committee? How frequently do they meet? Like, what does that look like overall for how city council is thinking about environmental issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. How many people are on the committee? I believe we're 7 council people on that committee.
Out of how many total for those who
17.
Okay.
And the council president, at the beginning of the term, so January, decided who was the chair or the vice chair. So we've actually only been the chair of this committee for 9 months now. There's no regular meeting schedule. They meet when council authorizes a hearing, so you have to introduce a resolution, and it has to be enacted, though I don't remember one time that they have not, done this, so it's more procedural, to have committee meetings formally. They would meet mainly to consider legislation, and then also to do informational hearings. I know we had, I think it was Councilmember Ahmad was the last one who we did an informational hearing with, but now I'm completely blanking on the topic. So we did one in electric vehicles. So that's the kind of thing where we're not per se passing legislation, but we're having discussions to bring awareness to an issue. That being said, this work is being done more behind the scenes, and we just did the city's budget, which went into effect in July. But throughout the budget process, we're thinking about what sort of investments we need to be making in this kind of thing, and having these conversations more informally, but not per se during a committee meeting.
Do you know how much money was allocated to the Office of Sustainability by chance, or a ballpark?
I don't know if you.
For our what we call Class 200 budget, which is for services, and it's like $780,000. So all of the contracts that we use, it might sound like a lot, but it's not. And then our I forget what our Class 100 is. I think it's like 1.2 million to cover the 27 people. So that's including salaries, but then benefits, and that's like a 0.42 multiplier. So it's almost like half of the salary is, add on another half for benefits. So
hence the federal money is really handy for the budget, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And going into this budget, we're already talking about knowing there's always a cut scenario, and we know that that's coming. Last year it was 3%. We think this year it'll be 3%. So 3% for us is a lot of money.
Yeah, and the reason why I was asking specifically is because, the more resources we put into city council and the things that we prioritize. I know our friends in Sunrise you can talk to after the Sunrise Philly, who are stationed in the other room, which is this lovely space. They're working on a campaign to increase funding for Parks and Rec, because I think ours is the most underfunded. That's one of the lists I've been reading. So, you know, I mean, where are we spending money as a city and where are our tax dollars going, right? I had so many good questions. So I'd say, overall, what do you think the biggest environmental hurdles to get things done, right? I think budget was kind of that first thing that I have heard about, and basically, you know, just want to draw that connection as you're asking, you know, how much budget and everything else. What other hurdles does Philly face? I mean, obviously, besides the obvious one of climate change, which we'll get into shortly.
Yeah. Do you want to start? I could go on with this one too, so maybe. Okay.
I think for the council member, you know, funding, we just said in addition to funding, but I do need to stress funding, of course. I think what we really see, and I don't know if we're going to get in this too, is just the inequities even in this district. And this sense in some of the communities have been ignored by the government and have suffered the most environmental harm, that this work isn't for them, this work isn't important as some other things. And in Philadelphia, we were just talking about this, 70% of emissions come from buildings, and that includes homes, right? So we really need private sector participation. We can pass all the bills we want, we can enact all the funding we want, but if homeowners, property owners don't want to be part of this work, those emissions aren't going to come down. And when we're talking about Philly, which is the poorest big city, especially with what's going on in the housing market, that's my council member is also the chair of the housing committee, right? I think Liz mentioned how burdened we are in terms of paying for utilities. It's even worse in terms of just like how much folks are paying for rent, how much they're paying for property taxes now with the new rent of assessments. So the truth of the matter is, for a lot of people, they can't even start talking about weatherizing homes and making them more energy efficient because they can't even afford to pay for all their meals, their health care. So I think, again, we keep talking about money, but I think really asking the state government and the federal government to continue that investment, and then working with these communities, showing them that this is really important and how it'll benefit their direct lives as well, is really important for the council member.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, money is, of course, always the thing. There are policy tools. We are a policy and planning office primarily. Our municipal energy office is part of our office as well. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of an operational aspect that we have, but largely policy. There's something that you said. It'll come to me. Yeah, just I think just the distributed nature of a lot of the work. There are different policies that we'll have for big buildings. There's something cooking now that hopefully we'll be able to make a little bit more public very soon. Again, another federal grant, but we're still working out the contract there. But there are things that we can do also for smaller buildings as well. But a lot of that gets to how do we scale up? How do we get people into the existing programs through PICO and, yes, PGW, because it still is the cheapest energy source right now. How do we work with our utilities? So that's a piece of it. How do we work with our partners, service providers like the neighborhood energy centers, or the Philadelphia Energy Authority that has programs to put solar on low and moderate income houses, and scale that up. So part of this workforce landscape assessment that we're doing is going to be looking at that and how do we scale that up. But I would say other challenges. So I would say leadership changes. We just are in the beginning of a mayoral administration change. So shifting priorities for a particular administration, so that our work is relevant to them. So with this administration, safe, clean, green, economic opportunity for all, I think it fits in very well with our mission, which is improving the quality of life for all Philadelphians through advancing environmental justice, reducing carbon emissions, and planning for a hotter and wetter future. And so all of our work is in that lens. I think the thing that gets hard with a leadership change is the immediacy, like right now, clean, green, safe is very literal. Clean up the streets, plant the trees, and public safety. But we think of it in a much broader way. So greening means something different for us. It's more policy and bigger. Same with clean, same with safe.
I want to stop you there, actually, because I think that was one of my questions. I was thinking about, Philly, the climate change effects are hotter and wetter.
Yep.
And I know the emphasis has been on clean and green, and I have not heard as much about climate as a part of that messaging. And I know there's a cabinet, the Clean and Green cabinet, with like 50 people, or I think it's representatives, right? And because you're on the cabinet.
Yeah.
And I know there's also players like PGW, and I think the Parking Authority, PPA. I'm curious if climate has been brought into that cabinet yet, or if there has been conversations, because I think that's the thing, right? Where climate is always put on the back burner for other things. There's so many urgent things, but obviously it's such an urgent thing like climate too.
Yes. So sustainability, I was asked to chair the Sustainability Committee. The Sustainability Committee has 3 focal points: waste reduction, recycling, and renewable energy. How our offices work to date, really the renewable energy is where we feel our office responsibility is. We do have a sanitation department that is responsible for waste reduction and recycling, and I'm sure, especially in this room, many of you are familiar that we had the zero waste and litter cabinet that was disbanded. So what do we do? So what we ended up doing, there was not a deliverable that came when that was disbanded, and so when I first started, we were asked to just take a lot of the meeting notes and sort of put together a waste reduction plan, and so we have that. And because the priority is still very much about immediate cleaning and immediate greening, we had really our first in-person meeting with the members of that committee to look at the recommendations that we assembled out of those zero waste meetings, and are working now to figure out what we do with some circular economy recommendations, recycling, waste reduction recommendations. The renewable energy piece, there is a biogas project, so waste to energy. The water department has facilities. They're not functioning optimally, but PGW is interested in some of that waste to energy to displace some of the frack gas that they use. It's a many-phase project. In order for us to take organics, which a lot of people, both on this sustainability committee and people in general, are really interested in seeing organics waste to energy, there are a lot of improvements that would need to happen to the water department's plant. So really phase 1 is monetizing the historical credits, and I'm going to talk a little out of my depth here, I'll be honest, it's very confusing stuff, but monetizing some of the credits so we can get money to make the improvements at the water department facilities so that we could actually do more than just, flushing waste to energy and doing food organics and others. So.
Yeah, because I think Pennsylvania still does not have a commercial organics recycling in the state. Like I know Bennett and Circle and other companies, there's not like an organics, like the, so basically if you have the bioplastics, those cannot be composted in normal composting, but I don't think Pennsylvania, because there was one in Wilmington that was shut down years ago, right?
I think so, yeah.
Not 100% on fact, but we're 98% sure for the record. I can fact check this later.
Great.
And Harrison, I'm curious, I know, speaking of climate and just the urgent issue, and I know there have been some declarations and I know you just also mentioned the EV chargers, and that's a fascinating thing. I think I'm sure you know, but the city has a goal for the whole fleet to go 100% EV by, when's the goal, when's it by, just for a quick intro?
I don't know that we put an actual year on it, because what we're doing with our vehicles is, as the life cycle of the current vehicles, as they need to get replaced, we will replace them with EVs. And the thing that's complicated and why we're being a little conservative about that is, one, we don't want to junk cars that are still working, but also the charging infrastructure is so expensive. It's like $1 million for a fast charger when you add in labor and all the things. And there is and really the money for EV infrastructure charging is really geared more for public right-of-way. So municipalities don't have a lot of opportunities. We have applied where we can, we haven't gotten the money. And so it is really a huge, huge challenge.
So going back to that, how do you feel like the balance of city council when you're thinking of the Committee of the Environment and policies with climate change in mind? Do you feel like climate change takes a priority in these issues? Do you feel like it's we have to put the fires out in Philadelphia? Like I know there was a contamination event by Bartram's Garden a few weeks ago. How do you feel like overall climate is playing into city council right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny you mentioned the EVs because 2 years ago, Council Member Gauthier launched her Just Services PHL campaign, which was fighting for cleaning and greening and other basic city services that we're not seeing in diverse communities. At the time, it was a very, I don't know if unpopular is the right word, but not a priority for the administration now. Obviously, that's completely changed. And I bring that up to say, one of the things we won the first time around was a EV for every member of LNI, which we did because folks were saying, well, LNI isn't coming out. We went to LNI and they said, we don't have cars for our people, and so that makes everything take longer, and people don't feel safe driving their own cars in case they get intimidated, someone falls them home, et cetera. So we said, okay, let's do it, but let's do EVs. And obviously there's been some issues with the chargers, but I bring that example up to demonstrate that I do think climate change is a priority, and I think one of the ways Councilmember Gauthier and other council people are thinking about it is how do we integrate sustainability into a lot of the things we're already doing. So whether we're talking about giving LNI what they need to succeed, but giving them electric vehicles, we're talking a lot about affordable housing. A lot of that is, I think you mentioned the Philadelphia Energy Authority does a basic repairs program. A lot of that is making homes more sustainable and energy efficient, which saves homeowners money and then also reduces emissions. When we're talking about gun violence, something that's been really big for us has been empowering community gardens, urban farms, other green spaces, which are obviously also good for the environment, but also reduce violent crime by 30% on the block. So there's a lot of ways to tackle these issues that, as you mentioned, are more here and now, that frankly voters and constituents want to see, because just the way our brains work is it's hard to pay a cost now for not a theoretical, but problem that's so opaque and far away. So of course, when we're talking about elected officials, your voters, your constituents want to see real results now, right? So I think something the council has been thinking a lot about, especially at the local level, where we're constrained by state law and obviously federal law, is how do we use the issues that are impacting Philly here and now to also prepare our city to weather the storm, so to speak, and just be a greener place to live.
I want to make sure we have some time for audience questions, but I have a couple more for each of you. One is, I know you were mentioning with Council Member Gauthier and the district, and environmental justice is such a big issue, both in West Philly and also the examples of Eastwick and Hunting Park, which have been central focuses of the Office of Sustainability for years. Is obviously very important for a transition to a sustainable city. It's not just, sustainable, making sure people have access to those programs and able to participate, and also just have clean air and water, which is something that we need, right, to live, literally. So I'm curious how, when we're thinking of residents, I think Eastwick and Hunting Park are some of these examples, but is there either legislation on your end on behalf of Councilmember Gauthier, or other ways that you're thinking of incorporating environmental justice into these policies and, goals that you're setting as the office as well? Whoever wants to take that first.
Do you have anything you maybe want me to start?
I'll just add a couple things.
Okay.
Less per se legislation that's coming down the pipe. I think we've talked a little about the affordable housing piece, but aside from obviously doing legislative work and funding in terms of more of the constituent services and convening power, we've been thinking about this a lot. We help the city with the urban agriculture plan, the tree plan. Those are things that Black and brown communities have been doing for decades, and the city wasn't a partner, it was actually usually an inhibitor, right? So giving the land bank tools to acquire urban farms that are technically on city-owned vacant land or abandoned private property so that they can stay community gardens and urban farms. I think we mentioned the tree plan too. I think if you ever have time, just walk down Spruce Street from here 10 blocks and you'll see every block west you go, there's like 10 less trees. That's a real thing, and it adds to it just being hotter, and also folks spending more on AC and electricity, and that really makes emissions higher and costs more for folks who can't really afford it. So working with the city on that. And then I think we mentioned very briefly the situation where it was discovered that there was hexavalent chromium on Bartram's Garden. And it's something that the State Department of Environmental Protection knew about since at least April of this year and just didn't really tell anyone. So we've been working with them and some city departments as well to kind of both clean it up, educate the public, and then say, okay, this process broke down. What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? So we're focused also on using her influence as a council person to make sure that the agencies are thinking about this from an environmental justice lens.
So for environmental justice specifically, what we are doing right now is creating a Philadelphia-specific environmental justice mapping tool, because the federal tool is not really serving our needs, and the state one is better, but still not specific enough. And so I think once that tool is finished, we will get more into policy tools related to various environmental justice issues based on what comes out of that mapping exercise. We have had a series of community workshops. I think they're wrapping up this Saturday to get feedback about the issues that communities are facing that are specific to them. But in terms of other policy, I mean, our office, in so many ways, we function as a convener for other departments, and so we help advise other departments on policies that they're going to put forward. We have a flood risk management task force. We have a clean waters task force. We have a community resilience and environmental justice working group, and really a lot of that is about getting departments to think about mitigation and resilience issues on the regular, so no surprises come up during budget season, and that they're incorporating elevating equipment if they're doing a major renovation to a city building or otherwise. We have a municipal EV working group. We also have a more general EV working group to deal with EVs in the public right-of-way. That one's led by our Office of Transportation and Infrastructure. We have crazy amount of meetings for Eastwick with federal and state entities, because a lot of money is coming from the feds, and there's a lot of state and regional interest. Delaware County is also very interested in what we're doing. So there's really a lot with that. And then I mentioned the energy poverty alleviation strategy, which we hope to be taking to the next level through some, again, federal funding. We also have, we were selected by Bloomberg as a Bloomberg American Sustainable City. And so hoping to really do a lot of our energy poverty work with the 3 staffers for 3 years that we'll get out of that. And one of the things is really looking at enabling legislation at the state level. What could we do locally? For instance, could there be a residential disclosure policy so that landlords have to disclose the amount of energy that's used, so people know when they rent a place what they're going to pay for utility bills? Yeah. So.
All right. Before I was gonna say, I love also but the Office of Sustainability works with all the other departments. It's like teamwork makes the dream work, kind of. Anyway,
We think so.
so before we get to audience questions, I'm sure people have a question or two, maybe. One in 30 seconds or less for each of you. What is a or a couple of ways this lovely room, people watching on We Talk Weekly, oh, sorry, did not mention, but our awesome partners at We Talk Weekly are also streaming this, so thank you for being here as well. Sorry, I had a lot to go through in that beginning, but they're awesome. What is one way that audience members and people at home could get more involved in sustainable initiatives in the city, become more proactive and civically engaged, where decisions are being made? What can they do? Harrison.
Obvious one, but vote. Especially this year, we really need Washington to keep giving us this money. Also, state elections, super important. The state has a surplus that's, I believe, $15 billion in unspent money, which is more than 3 times the entire city of Philadelphia budget. That being said, they also didn't fund whole home repairs, which helps fund the weatherization programs we've been talking about, right? So we need folks in Harrisburg who are also going to make this a priority. Call your representatives in Harrisburg, in DC, council people too, especially around budget. Tell them this is a priority. And come down to City Hall. You know, we do, you can give comment during city council meeting. When we have environmental committee hearings as well, we take public comment. If you can't come in person, you can do written testimony as well. And the last thing I'll say is call 311. If you see something going on, you see trash. The situation we were talking about at Bartram's Garden came to light because a resident saw some discolored liquid and called the state, right? So, you know, the state wouldn't even know, let alone the rest of us, that this was going on if someone didn't call. So it just speaks to the power. So I don't know. We can.
Sorry, I just thought that it seemed probably very unlikely that nobody locally had seen it prior to that one incident, and that suddenly the state is on the hook for that awareness. It was probably witnessed by many other people over a very long period of time. And I just think that maybe that's a bit misleading. I'm sorry. There's home court advantage in every situation until we violate it. I mean, there's no way the state is like, what's going on in Bartram Garden?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I guess what I should say is the state didn't start investigating until someone said this looks weird, right? There is Google Maps evidence to suggest that this might have been going on for a lot longer. I guess what I should have said is the state Environmental Protection Department did not start investigating until someone reported it. And I think one of the questions we're asking is why did it take that for anything to happen, and why did it take so long?
A big fan of accountability. You can't change anything, no hold yourself down.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, and maybe it gets a little bit to that, is use your voices to communicate at all level of governments. I mean, I think you heard me say that our office with climate change, it is the long game. You know, there's immediate need, of course, and we are doing things now to get us to the long game as fast as we can. But in our world, you know, as a department head, it's really a lot of the focus is on the immediate. And so to the degree that you can communicate your interests in the long-term, safe, clean, green, economic opportunity for all, and how our office fits into that and sustainability fits into that, that's helpful, because I think it needs to come from you. You know, we can say it and it means something, but it probably means a lot more coming from people outside of us. So I would say that is the one thing I would recommend.
And now, thank you for each of those answers. I would like to, we have a lot of hands, and actually I'm going to volunteer this wireless mic. I will walk around and play MC because I like doing that. And I'll hold this to you well, and you can go back and forth. All right, Laura, just because you're closest, here you go.
All right, you're going to have to cut me off as well. Stretch codes, that's what Massachusetts is doing to get people, like you said, how do you get people who do have some means to do something, and how do you get developers and contractors and architects to do it? You do it by a stretch code. That we are passive house designers and architects, and we did our own home, which is going to be on the Greenfield tour. But the point is that we had burdens with the city. We took the Historic Commission to court using the Environmental Bill of Rights in order to be allowed to do a passive house in our house. So, and then I do expert witness work where I deal with plaintiffs whose houses are rotting and they're not even 10 years old. There's no accountability there. There's no training. If people don't know how to do it, then they're not going to do it. And our contractors have no training responsibility. We need training, we need a stretch code, and we need PHFA rules and passive house to be done for all new affordable housing. And then there's a row house manual that my husband and I helped write that is free on Green Building United's website for any homeowner with a row house who wants to learn how to do it well.
Great, thank you. I saw you at the ULI conference, so I appreciate that. And as a preservation planner by training and someone who is very interested, if I get to go beyond interim director, I'm very interested in embodied carbon and sort of pushing the nexus between preservation and the need to not be tearing down, and how do we really make better, more efficient use of the buildings we have. For me, it's about a community character perspective more than it is about necessarily the pristineness and the preciousness of materials, although there is some of that as well. I will say, in terms of stretch codes, you know way more than I do. It is something that we've talked a little bit more in my office about. I know that right now at the state, they're looking at revising the residential codes and retracting, I think, making them less stringent. So that is something that we are looking at.
Codes are 20 years behind basic
Yeah.
building science knowledge, and they are the floor of which below you are unlawful.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I don't disagree. And so we are looking at how we adopt, at least at a minimum, maintain and not what was, and do more, both for energy and for flood resilience. So.
Next, whoops, that's very loud. Next question. I can also say your name.
Sure. Hi, I'm Eric Orts. I'm a Penn professor and I'm a local resident. First, I want to thank Jamie Gauthier's office for helping us to get an EV charger, but it's really difficult right now through the city, and without Jamie's help, we wouldn't have gotten it. And in general, the EV situation is really terrible, and where there's no high charger, and it's a big problem from an environmental perspective. So I wonder if the city can comment about how we're going to get more EV chargers. But the big question, Mayor Parker has just agreed to the 76ers stadium in Chinatown, and you talk about the long-term climate impact that you're looking at. So my question is, was your office in the city, have you done an environmental assessment of this? My understanding from Penn students and others is that this is an environmental disaster. It's a climate disaster, and there's no reason to be building this, except that the unions want it and big money developers want to put this through. So I would like to know what actual steps, has there been an environmental impact assessment that's reliable done on this? Because I'm pretty sure building a stadium of this size with this kind of traffic congestion is a climate disaster, and we should, and so I'd like to hear a comment from the city representative.
Sure, and I'm from the city, I'm one department, so I just want to clarify this. This whole process went through our planning and development department. There was a series of studies, as I'm sure many of you know. I think it was a 4-part study for that. I know they did transportation impact. If there were federal licenses, money, or permits needed, like a traditional National Environmental Policy Act, environmental impact statement, or environmental assessment would have been done. Absent that, it wouldn't have been required. We, in our office, we didn't have any funding to do an environmental impact statement. The only thing that we did when we were asked was give guidance about other stadiums when they're doing something this big. How do they get to LEED Platinum? How do they design to a higher standard to reduce their energy use? Environmental justice is an entirely different issue. and certainly understand that. So obviously our office is concerned about Chinatown and the impact on an environmental justice community. For EVs, there's two tracks of how we're handling EVs in the city. The Office of Sustainability is working on the municipal side of it, our fleet, and how do we manage the transition to electric vehicles and adding chargers. Our Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems is looking at the EVs that are needed in the public right-of-way. And of course, this is very difficult because as soon as you bring parking into it, that's hard. You have companies that would gladly put in EV charging, but usually that comes with advertising. And so state routes, you can't put advertising. So you, like the Link kiosks and advertising that would go on an Indigo state, there's all kinds of rules around advertising in state routes. On local routes, again, we get to the parking issue, constrained streets. So it's a huge planning process. What I can say is I believe it's still open. There is an RFP on the city's website right now to get a contractor to help suss out the many issues with how to get through putting EV chargers in the public right-of-way. How do we work with developers or existing Targets and grocery stores and other places where you can charge while you're shopping. That is kind of the easier route to go in many ways. But the removing parking for dedicated EV charging until there's more of mass use of EVs is just a very complicated thing. But another office is working on that side of the issue. And I realize probably both of those answers are not the best, but those are the ones I have for now. Yeah.
Angie on our team also did a article on the environmental impact survey, or just kind of the lack thereof, so happy to send that resource afterwards as well.
I guess the only thing I'll add is these are good questions, and Mayor Parker announced today that she's going to transmit legislation to City Council, so that kind of, now we are starting Council's role in this, and I think these are questions we are going to want to ask, and I think there will be at least 3 public hearings, so hopefully some of you or you yourself can come out and ask these questions as well, and raise these objections too.
Use that civic voice like we're talking about tonight, right?
Hi, my name is Susanna Beckett. I work with the City of Philadelphia in Parks and Rec and Thomas Jefferson University in the Ecology Department. In relationship to our architect friend here, I have many comments about landscape ecology and the relationship with flipping and paving both tree pits and backyards in particular in our beautiful green West Philadelphia, where we lose lots of stormwater capture, et cetera. Plus the relationship that individuals get to have with the environment, which I love to hear all of the policy changes and big picture opportunities that we have. But from the ground up is an opportunity for individuals, community gardens, as I know Jamie Gauthier is very much in support of, would mean saving green spaces. So I'm very interested in what the city has to do with both dealing with affordable housing and saving green spaces, which to me would include deturfing, depaving, and dealing with high quality in a high quality environment. So the biology. I never hear anybody talk about plant species, wildlife, insects, soil, content, and these are the things that will save our lives.
So just to make sure I understood your question, the relationship between affordable housing and greening?
Well, saving green spaces,
okay.
And sometimes there's conflict between those two things, the building that we insist on doing and need to do. But also, is there any plan to save space in Philadelphia? And what do we do to land bank as much as we possibly can?
Yeah, I think the tension you mentioned is real, right? I think from a policy perspective, we've passed 2 pieces of legislation. The first one is what we call the Public Land for Public Benefit Bill. From a affordable housing perspective, the best tool we have to bring it online is our city-owned vacant land. But a lot of this land is already being used for urban farms and community gardens. I don't think, at least my boss is interested in raising any sort of community gardens to build affordable housing, right? I think we really have to look at what's already there and what's the context of the neighborhood. But this bill that I mentioned lets the community buy the land with a faster, less red tape process for either affordable housing or community gardens. So really just empowering neighbors to take control of this land that's just blighted most of the time and what they think is best for their community. I think I mentioned also we gave the land bank the power to basically save land that's already being used as community green space. Can't remember the name of the case, but there's a recent Supreme Court decision that made that legislation necessary. So we're just working with them to keep that space online. And then just working with different groups about informing neighbors about the importance of this. We were just at the National Association of Black Realtors did a workshop in Southwest Philly about how to test your soil, what kind of plants are good, native trees and plants and all that kind of thing. So just working with the community and empowering a lot of these practices that have already been going on. But again, as I said earlier, the city kind of made harder. Let's flip that a little bit and make it easier for folks.
Also, just a quick tip, Melvin on our team is on the Vacant Lands Committee on behalf of Circular Philadelphia. So if you are interested in vacant land and what's happening, good person to talk to. Other questions, and we can take a couple more before I will let networking continue.
Hi, my name's Jesse Cohen. I'm a residential consultant for Solar States. My question involves the credit that the city used to give out for people to go solar. There used to be a grant that people would be able to apply for on a kilowatt basis as a rebate for them to go solar. And that was in effect before COVID happened. And then when COVID came about, that kind of stopped. I was hoping when I saw the Inflation Reduction Act came out and the increases in solar funding that came with that I would see that grant from the city come back, but it still hasn't. I'm curious to know why the city stopped doing that, if it was just for funding or if there was more, and if there's any plans to bring that back.
I haven't been in this realm long enough to know about that grant or credit. I'm sorry, was it a grant program you said? Or yeah, so I would have to ask in the office. I can tell you right now with who we have, we're not resourced. We don't have someone to do that. Maybe for municipal buildings, but not in the private sector. But we do work with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and I think through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and the money that the city is receiving through that, I'm sure they have plans to scale up solar. I don't know if it's a credit or through some other means, but it's something I could look into, but I'm not familiar.
Put solar on a roof that isn't insulated and air sealed.
You should. I'm sorry. You should not be able to. Yeah.
Allowed to put solar on a roof that isn't also well insulated.
Yeah.
And air sealed.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Do that first, and then the solar.
Yeah. And so that gets to what we talked about at the beginning and the distributed nature. I mean, it is the property owner's right to do it or not. We would want to make sure that it's being done properly. And through the Energy Authority programs, they're going in and doing an assessment to see that the roof can handle the weight and is situated correctly to get the most out of it. But like I said, I would have to look more into that.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. So next question.
Maybe I have many questions. You're talking about recycling, about compost. Why the city accept that mega store, and those store, as everything is 90% is under plastic, carbon, and everything will go to the trash. That you know that. So why you accept that store giant? I mean, now we have 3 or 4 that's the biggest store in Philadelphia. There's no way we recycle that because it's too much. Number 2, isn't it a rule we have to reduce the electricity? I mean, I see from my window, from my building, So every building, the light is on all night long until the next morning. I don't see any change. Even on a time where the bird, emigrate, nobody turned off the light. So I know it is a land of generosity and abundance, but we have to teach to my American compatriots to save energy. So you're talking about money. Can you save a little bit of money to make a publicity? I mean, not everyone watching the TV or read the New York Times, but on the news, we don't get the news. I mean, it's trouble all over the world, and we don't get it. Others don't get it. So, example, the bus station, you have a window, you could make some publicity. Let's change. You're talking about tree. I mean, you see is a fire everywhere in this planet. How many people smoke cigarette with the bud and it will be on the ground in a city? We know that pollute the river and will pollute the ocean, and it's terrible for the environment. But in America, we did not learn that. So in my country, we have access in water everywhere. Whatever it is a city, you have just to put your bottle, we get water. We don't have this in the city in Philadelphia. Isn't it the rules? We should to paint every roof in a white paint. I have seen from my window the bank, the pizza, the Wawa is a brand new black roof. Is no one coat of paint is white. So it's many things. Another thing, you're talking about paving. Isn't it time to pave the street, Walnut Street, Chestnut Street? I mean, it's dirty there. It's time to do something. Isn't it mandatory to asking the owner from the business to power wash the front of the street? It's dirty, it smells very bad. Can we stop to make a graffiti in the city? Because all of us, we pay for that. It still is a lot of graffiti. Behind my building, by the way, I am an artist, an activist, and all my art is about that. I see every week people dump stuff every week, and every time the city comes to paint, the wall under that bridge, it will be again graffiti. So it is a simple rule, but I think it's time to teach the people, our people. Is money, yes, of course, but simple thing and make the change. You're talking about save electricity, but we watch on the TV is always go to buy the biggest SUV. There's no way we save energy on that way. To save energy, we have to get a very small car. We don't have a snow anymore, so please buy a small car. But the publicity on the TV, on a magazine, is not there. It's not there for us. Sorry, it was a lot of questions, a lot of emotions.
Okay, there was a lot there. And some of those issues are quality of life issues, and some of that are very real, and I agree. And some are more sustainability issues. I will say that with the mayor's clean and green cabinet, things like graffiti, like these nuisance issues, illegal dumping, that is all part. She has several committees. Sustainability is just one. There's enforcement committees. There's cleaning and greening. So there are several different subcommittees charged with looking at exactly this, because graffiti is something that I know, me too. So there's that. The cigarette butts, you mentioned that, and concur. I know the streets department is actually looking at new receptacles where you put butts in there. Early days. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, but they are looking at that. What else?
We need publicity.
Yes.
In my country,
Yes.
we have a publicity in a train station, in a bus, everywhere.
Yes.
It's effective.
Yeah, so this is something, and I can talk to, we don't have a communications person, but we have someone who plays one on TV. And so I could talk to her about some campaigns, and then working with our Office of Transportation Infrastructure, who manage the bus shelters and the advertising, and a lot of the advertising on those shelters and in the links is supposed to be for a percentage of that is non-revenue generating. It's really public messaging. So I will take that back and see if there's something we can do about that. Anything else?
about saving energy from the building, the business building. It's
And that-
supposed to turn out the light.
Yes, and that too would be a good public education campaign. We do have programs now, energy efficiency programs that are about first benchmarking your energy and water use to understand the actual use. And then the next step of that is a tune-up program so that you're actually reducing. And we just reconfigured a few things. We are issuing violations, so I think over time people will see if they are turning off lights that will help. And then we can't really talk about it yet because we're still working on the federal grant, but we're going to the next level. So more on that, but it's also about energy efficiency.
Did you have anything to add before I?
I just think really quickly, I think education is really important. The council member agrees. In terms of, SUVs, unfortunately we can't stop them from selling them, but something we've been really focused on is uplifting transit, right? And again, we're going back to the funding. We need the state to step up here. And then something that's big for the council member as well is more bike lanes, so we can make it easier for people to get around without a car. And just in making streets safer so that people feel comfortable on their bikes, feel comfortable walking. The white roofs, I guess that's one of the big problems with Philly being such an old city, right? Everything is inefficient, everything's old, it wasn't built for climate change. So again,
I disagree.
Yes, because in India, yes, everybody paints the roof, It had changed tremendously the heat inside the roof. It's not about much money, it's about, do a little bit.
Yeah.
Do something.
but then
City code, council has power to make city code. If we don't do it, it's nothing.
I do. I love that this conversation also has gone a very wide depth. And I think to summarize what we've talked about tonight, we went over everything from cleaning and greening the city, but actually how that is different than climate change. Obviously there's a lot of frustration we've heard about houses, how they're built, obviously having new structures, a stadium that was just passed today. Not necessarily passed, just endorsed by the mayor. Just let's make that clear too, because it still technically does have to go through city council, which I'm going to come back to in a second. A lot of hurdles in general, the quality of life issues, even the green spaces. And I have a dog, so I'm constantly walking around noticing the lack thereof when he has to pee on the little grass, on like grass weeds, and people complain about that. But he doesn't have a lot of places, Anyway, with a lot of those problems, I also see a lot of really cool solutions in this room, looking around. I mean, right here, our friends at Solar States, I don't know how, we've been around for 15 years, right? Doing and Solarize Philly, which is a program to get low cost or lower cost panels to people across the city. I think just surpassed 3,200 houses in the city of Philadelphia. And that's also through Philadelphia Energy Authority. So that's awesome. Our friends at Blue Path, Laura and Paul, who basically have been working on passive houses at Green Building United, another great network of the built environment. That's 70% of our carbon emissions, especially heating and the lights, so LEDs, all that stuff. Energy Co-op having clean, in the back, having clean ways to, if you can't get solar, then you can obviously choose your own electricity in the state of Pennsylvania. Another really cool hot tip. And we could go on. Environmental justice programs that we meant, the weatherization. I was just at a Solarize event. They also were basically, not like doing low cost solar for homeowners. That basically be the same price of their Pico bill to install solar too. So all of this to say, there are so many really cool people doing solutions. This is one of the first 2 events we'll be doing for EV. So I love all these conversations and also want to hear from all of you how we can continue these conversations for one. So definitely tell us. We do have a survey. There's QR codes, which Lauren is lovely handing. And if you miss that, we'll send emails, so we will track you down. Jokes. I also wanted to point it out because I've been doing this for 16 years. I know there's a lot of great advocates within city government, but they can only do so much based on budget, based on what powers they have, how many staff members they have, depending on the other people of city council and what the priorities are. And there's a lot of priorities. So number one thing, It's your voices. It's your ability to bring these issues that are important. My other thing I won't get too long into, which is the story for a cocktail later, if anyone's interested. But I worked on a plastic bag campaign, and it was like 10, 12 years ago before. It had nothing to do with the most recent one that was passed. But understanding how much work it takes to try to do anything, especially when you're an environmental advocate, like the Penn Futures, Penn Environments, those environmental organizations, Sunrise, Citizens Climate Lobby, they are all amazing. So please get involved where you can, which brings us to talk to ACLU about voting and the cool things they're doing, getting people involved in this really important election. Talk to Sunrise about how to get funding for Parks and Rec so we have more green spaces. And thank you so much, Arts League, We Talk Philly, Liz, Harrison, my team, our partners. Thank you. And we'll have approximately another 20-ish minutes or so to chat to the speakers, to each other, to our friends. Thank you all. That's it.